What's going on, fam? Welcome to SkillTree, where we learn how to do just about everything. Today we're going to be looking to level up our wood crafting and a little bit of metal crafting by making this aggressive little buckler. Now, for those of you who don't find yourself engaging in sword duels very often, it must be nice to live such a charmed little life. A buckler is a small shield used in conjunction with a one-handed sword, usually used for deflecting blows or handing out the hurt like a brass knuckle frisbee. As you can see with my example here, I am definitely leaning more heavily on the more aggressive aspects of this little guy's nature. Anyway, this project is a request from one of you skill monkeys, Tom Egnaczyk. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Egnaczyk. You can correct me in the comments if I am wrong. Has requested this a couple of times now. Thank you, Tom, for the request. I hope it lives up to your expectations. This thing's actually kind of awesome, so lives up to mine. Cool, with all that out of the way, let's jump right in and level up these skills. Step 1, building the shield. I decided to go with oak because it's really strong and pretty to boot. I began by marking out 1 foot lengths and then drawing a straight line with my square. Then I proceeded to cut my lengths with a handsaw. Now my finished buckler is going to be 9.5 inches across, so 4 boards is more than enough to get this done. Using a compass, I marked my board to my desired specifications. I then placed marks to keep track of which boards went where. Now at this stage, you could just glue and clamp all the boards together, but I am traveling for business this week and I do not have the luxury of time. But this actually works out in our favor because it gives me a good opportunity to go over pocket hole joining. To that end, I'm using the Craig jig here to aid this process. Basically, the jig ensures the holes are drilled into the board at a precise angle to a specific depth. To join the boards together, start by applying glue to both edges and spreading it evenly. Clamp the boards together and down so that the joints are even, and drive your screws into the holes provided by the jig. So the resulting connection is immediately strong and provides a good clamping force while the glue dries. So I've used this method for making tables, picture frames, freaking everything. It's really easy to use, and the resulting joint is just so clean right off the bat. Like, you barely ever have to actually even sand them so that they line up. The finished product looks like one piece of wood. It's really cool, actually. And for my purposes, it's really fast, so I can work with it already before the glue even dries. Now with everything together, I cut my circle out with a jigsaw. A lot of times people feel like they need to kind of push on the blade to kind of make it cut through. You don't. Let the saw do all the work and just provide a little bit of the force forward and the steering. That's it. You do not have to push hard to make this thing work. Just kind of let it glide its way through. Having finished the cut, I cleaned up the edge with an orbital sander. So to add this bad boy's protective powers as well as its striking force, I opted to band the edge with this 1/8 inch steel flat bar. By working it along the edge of the shield, I was able to form it into a ring. Okay, so those super cuts make that whole process look really easy, and it wasn't hard per se, and it took some strength to do. It's more the act of you have to take it and then kind of wind it in on itself to make the ring actually smaller than you think it needs to be, and that'll just make sure that it hugs onto the board so you're not fighting it when you try to screw the thing in. Just wanted to add that because there weren't any really good shots of me doing that, and I feel like that was misleading because it's like, you're working it and bam, there's a ring. Took a little bit more than that. But stick with it, it's not hard, it's just like physically demanding a little bit. Once satisfied with the shape, I cut off the excess steel, forming a hoop. Then I proceeded to drill holes, spaced 3 inches apart, all around the center line of the ring. Pre-drilling into the wood to avoid splits, I secured the ring in place with some panhead screws. I like the rounded look of these as they almost have like a rivet appearance, which I thought added really nicely to the overall look of the banding. Finally, I hit the wood with my sander just to clean up the surfaces. The result here is quite a beautiful little tambourine of death. A gorgeous pen of broken teeth and dreams, if you will. Speaking of which, step 2, be aggressive. So bucklers usually have a bulbous little piece of metal in the middle called a boss. I'm the boss. This applies both a little space for your hand to fit into, as well as a good rounded surface to deflect blows off of. For my version, I opted for something slightly more aggressive. To make this spike, I purchased this log splitter from Home Depot. I guess you normally put kind of the point of it into the log you want to split and you hit it with a hammer. Huzzah, it splits. Using an angle grinder, I created an oblong shank beneath a 3-inch point. I then nipped it off with a cutting wheel and made it as uniform as possible. Back in the workshop, I began drilling a hole in the shank, being sure to use a bit of oil as I went. Fun fact, when you use oil like this when you're drilling into metal, it's not just to provide lubricant, it's also to help remove the heat from the surface of the metal. As you drill, the friction of the bit actually causes the metal to heat up, and once it gets to a certain temperature, you're actually hardening the metal. As you can imagine, this makes it exponentially harder for you to drill that metal. It's gonna waste your time and it's gonna destroy your drill bits. So yeah, add a little bit of oil while you're drilling and just save yourself the trouble altogether. I increased my bit sizes, growing the hole until I reached my desired size of 5/16. Then, using a tap, I threaded the hole so that it can accept a bolt. This is how I'm going to attach the spike to the shield. Next, I positioned the spike in the middle of the buckler and traced out its shape. Now, since it's only being held on by one bolt in the back, it would have a tendency to twist. So by sinking the shank into the wood, that's going to help lock it in place and stop it from being able to turn. Using a drill bit with tape on it as a depth marker, I drilled a bunch of holes in the marked out space to remove material. Then I went in with a chisel to clean it out a little further. Finally, I honed the shape in with the Dremel, until my enemy perforator fit all snug-like. Pleased with that, I drilled a hole for my bolt to pass through, then secured the bolt and washer assembly to my spike. Now this thing started looking positively dangerous. Making it time for step 3, get a handle. So unless you're looking to play a really intense game of Ultimate Frisbee, you're going to want to put a handle on this bad rabbit. For my buckler, I'm using a 1-inch oak dowel as a handle. I started by measuring out a comfortable width for my meat hooks. Then I cut the piece off with a handsaw. Holding my bracket to the ends of my handle, I marked out an outline for a cut. Couple of quick notes here. So because this doesn't have that boss we were talking about, there isn't a space in the back for my hand to fit into. As such, we had to raise the handle up a little bit so my hand can fit in comfortably. For this purpose, I decided to use these L brackets here to create that space. Now I'm grooving in a space for these L brackets to fit into in this handle piece, because there's only enough room on each side for a single screw to fit in. That essentially makes them into an axle in which this thing would kind of turn around as I'm trying to use it. Not ideal for when you're trying to defend yourself or attack and just all flopping all over the place. By making that groove, the wood itself is actually going to act as a stopper and lock it in place. Okay, I just wanted to point that out in case it wasn't clear why I was doing what I was doing. To cut out these grooves, I just sawed a bunch of shallow lines in the space I wanted to remove. Then I went back in with a chisel and removed the unwanted material. Then I just cleaned everything up with a file. The final result is a nice snug fit for the bracket. Now I opted to add the stain to the yoke before I added the handle. I really like the depth of the grain this brings out and the overall feel it gives to the buckler. I feel like I mentioned the feel of the piece often. I guess for me it's just kind of an artistic thing. When you look at it, kind of what does it conjure? Like for me, I'm looking for kind of a medieval-ish feel. And these dark woods and studs on it, I don't know if I'm conditioned by media or whatever, but it feels medieval-y to me. So that's kind of what I mean by the feel of the piece. With the stain all done, I positioned the handle where I wanted it. I pre-drilled the holes as usual and secured the brackets in place with 2 screws each. Then I repeated the process to set the handle in place. So the balance and weight at this point felt pretty good, but the handle felt a bit thin. To fix this and add a little bit more bulk and grip, I decided to wrap the handle with leather cordage. A method I like is to make a bite in the cord and position it along the handle. Then, leaving the tail from the bite hanging out, wrap the cord up the handle. Once you reach the end, send the end of the cord through the bite. Finally, pull on the end you left hanging out to pull the loop and the remainder of the cord below the windings, locking everything in place. Then just cut off any excess to finish it all off. So the control and comfort granted by the new grip is like night and day. Before it felt like it kind of wanted to drift around in my hands. Now it is exactly where I want it, and it doesn't feel like it's gonna move around on me, even though this is fairly weighty. So worth it. I would recommend adding a grip to it anyways if you can. It makes a difference. All right, to pretty it up a little bit here at the end, I decided to add on some of these upholstery nails to fill in the empty space a bit and add to the overall look. They just hammer into place, so they were like a super quick way to get the look I wanted. And check out the finished product. I love the feel of this thing in my hand. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm swinging it all over the place, and it's just one of those things that kind of feels good to wield. You don't really get to wield things too often during the course of your day, now that I think of it. So first off, defensively, like with the oak and the steel banding, nothing is getting through this. Short of gunfire, and even then, leave down in the comments if you know what caliber will go through oak and steel. It feels secure, feels really secure. Its defensive properties are almost secondary though. Every surface of this thing's a damage deal. Like hitting with the sides is gonna be terrible, and this point is positioned exactly in the right spot for a good punch. Like it just feels like that's where I would want it to be. Yeah, obviously don't go around hurting people with your creations. That's not the purpose of this, although, I mean, this is the purpose of this item, I suppose. I'm just saying I understand why these things were created and why they were designed the way they were designed. It's kind of that piece of history where on the surface of it, you can see a picture of it and you immediately understand what it's for, but until you actually hold it and feel it in your hands, you don't physically get what it's for. Like as soon as you touch your hand, you're like, oh no, yeah, I see. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. Anyways, that is my buckler build. Tom, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it met up to your expectations. And if any of you liked it, why don't you hit me with that thumbs up love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. I guess ring the bell too. I always forget about the bell. Bell and subscribe should be the same thing. It makes no sense to me. Finally, if you have a skill you want to see covered, why don't you follow Tom's lead and leave a request down in the comment section, and I will add it to the list. Also, I think I'm gonna start adding like the entirety of the list down in the description, because I just show like a little snippet here and sometimes I go out of order. Really comes down to what materials I have and the kind of timing I have, but the list is actually really long. People have been leaving a lot of good requests, so keep it up, everybody. I love it. All right, I better get going. As I said before, I do have a business trip and my flight leaves in like 2 hours. Hey Kit, why were you late? Well, I was building a buckler for YouTube. That'll fly. I wonder if they consider this carry-on. Anyways, I'll see you guys when I get back. In the meantime, keep leveling up, you. This thing's awesome. Using an anal grinder. Okay.